Good day everyone, especially to my professor, Dr. Jixie Cobillas. Today I will be talking about Westernizing the Philippine education, the gradual weakening of the Filipino culture. The Philippines is rich and diverse with cultural and historical influences over the years that are present in the current times. Social, economical, political, and most importantly, educational structure of the country have been greatly impacted from the different colonizers. Westernization is a result of colonialism. Westernization is the adoption of the practices and culture of Western Europe by societies and countries in other parts of the world, whether through compulsion or influences, and that is according to Britannica.com on 2020. The historical foundations of education will aid a person in comprehending how past events shape today's educational system, especially in the Philippine setting. It enables a person to comprehend some of the most significant trends and changes in our educational system. The history of the Philippine educational system is dynamic and adaptive to change. The transformation of the Philippine educational system started with the colonialism. The impact of these three colonizers is still reflected on the present-day educational system. According to Barcelona of 2017, during the pre-colonial period, the education system of the Philippines had existed through informal and unstructured homeschooling and decentralized in nature. In a home setting, the educational system was an apprenticeship, where the learner had direct and actual learning taught by the parents and guided by the babaylan. He also added that the second was enculturation process, wherein people learned the necessities of the nearby culture and adopted values and manners appropriate or required. Culture from the colonizers have been transmitted in the Philippine setting and have gone very far in inculcating knowledge, beliefs, and attitudes among Filipinos. Transmission of culture happens in education, wherein learners socialize and learn ideas, behaviors, and practices. Since there is a great influence of the Western culture in the Philippine educational system, most likely that the Filipino learners assimilate the Western culture more than their own. Sociological aspect of education and the Philippine setting have been greatly influenced by the Westernization, most importantly in education. One of the most evident areas in Westernizing the Philippine education is the use of the English language as a medium of instruction in schools. According to Quijano in 2012, the Philippine education is patterned by the American system where English is the medium of instruction. The Philippine literature in English that was vastly influenced by American forces appeased the Filipinos and instilled in them the ideals of universality, practicality, and democracy. One of the indelible influences of the American colonizers is the use of the English language in the country, and it has been made as a second language as the Philippines in the Philippines alongside with Filipino. However, it is only on the recent years that MTV-MLE was used as a medium of instruction in the primary level. On the other hand, the succeeding years of the elementary level, secondary, and tertiary level still uses English as their medium of instruction. According to Esquivel in 2018, textbooks for subjects like calculus, physics, chemistry, and biology are written in English rather than Filipino. When it comes to using English in teaching in other subject areas like mathematics and science, all of the student-teacher respondents were inclined to using English as the language in teaching than the said other subjects. This is due to the fact that various terms like mathematical and scientific in these two content areas do not have exact Filipino counterparts, notwithstanding the reality that most, if not all, materials are written in English, and that is according to Franco in 2017. Viscondit in 2006 points out that English, in some cases, tends to be more official and more privileged in stature than Filipino or any other languages or dialects in the country. According to Casambra in 2000, in the present Philippine educational system, one finds various techniques and methods to improve instruction which are traceable to American influence. He added that in-service training conferences, seminars, and workshops to upgrade teaching competencies of teachers are undertaken. Usually, American educators and American-trained Filipino education specialists are invited to serve as resource persons. He further stated that it is inevitable that American educational ideas and practices are the ones emphasized and consequently influence the results of these training activities. He emphasized that it is in the universities and colleges that the impact of American education in the Philippines is most apparent, and an overwhelming preponderance of textbooks written by Americans and other Western authors remains to be used for instruction, and English is still very much used the medium of instruction in the classrooms. According to Cassandra in 2000, in the present Philippine educational system, one finds various techniques and methods to improve instruction which are traceable to American influence. He added that in-service training, conferences, seminars, and workshops to upgrade teaching competencies of teachers are undertaken. Usually, American educators and American-trained Filipino education specialists are invited to serve as resource persons. The strengthening of the use of English in the Philippines has been a result of a cyclical process, starting from it being used as the language of the schools, then later on used by the graduates of such schools who eventually become leaders in businesses and government, who then promote businesses and government practices that encourage the use of English aside from Filipino in the educational system, according to Dawe in 2014. According to Esquivel in 2018, cultural change is expected as learning English also involves learning English cultures. One's cultural identity is reflected through words, phrases, and norms of the particular group of people who own the language. According to Addison in 2010, for present-day students, such extreme alienation appears to have abated with the gradual patching up of Constantino's miseducation of the Filipino. Even as those who are submitted to the discipline of English-speaking private schools may still find themselves unsettled when they, upon entering college, discover that they are not living in an English-speaking country and that there is nothing shameful about being able to express oneself in Filipino. Be this as it may, the quality of public schooling remains such that it regularly falls short of the mark of inculcating a collective identity on the basis of the bonds of history, language, experience, and the geography of the encompassing state. According to De Leon in 2016, our country has been spending valuable public money for the education of Filipino professionals in science and many other fields. But since the cultural sources of their education are Western, it is inevitable that the expertise they acquire will be more applicable or appropriate to a Western industrialized society than to the rural, agricultural setting of most Philippine provinces. So a great number of our graduates will end up migrating to Western or Westernized countries. The influences brought about by the Western culture is highly visible in our country from pop culture, politics, economy, and most importantly, in education. The historical and sociological foundations in the Philippine education have brought significant changes in the country's education. Since history and culture is learned through formal schooling, and Western influence have been embedded and played a huge part in the Philippine educational system, it is notable to say that Western culture have been unknowingly or knowingly inculcated among the Filipino learners. As the educational system have been marked with Western influence, this have caused Western perspective of life. More Filipino learners desire to become an American or European rather than their own nationality. Learners who are supposed to continue agricultural and even cultural heritage of their own family chooses a way of life different from what and how they were nurtured. Filipino learners are more inclined to learn and adopt the Western culture than strengthening the learning of their own. Westernization of the Philippine educational system have weakened the Filipino culture since Western practices and theories of education have been implemented in our system. And that results to loss of identity and roots among the Filipino learners. However, the abundance and richness of the Filipino culture through our educational system could still be appreciated, manifested, and strengthened through the Philippine Cultural Education Program being designated as the body along with the Department of Education under the National Cultural Heritage of 2009, which was enacted on March 6, 2010. They are tasked to formulate the cultural heritage education programs both for local and overseas Filipinos to be incorporated into the formal, alternative, and informal education with emphasis on the protection, conservation, and preservation of cultural heritage property. They concluded that students perform better academically and also grow up to be more independent and active citizens when they learn in an environment where their language and culture are valued. With a strong controlling force of the Philippine state to implement culture-based education, indigenization, and contextualization of learning activities and practices, this will promote and develop and inculcate a sense of pride and identity in one's cultural background among the Filipino learners. A strong controlling force of the state and active involvement of the community and educational experts is needed to awaken and strengthen the love towards the Filipino roots and culture. With these, the Filipino culture through the Philippine educational system will be valued and appreciated by the Filipino learners. That is all, and I hope you gained something from me today. This has been Miss Janice Arbacaro saying God bless us all and thank you.